Everybody, and welcome to today's study of Chassidus. We're learning today about the modern meaning of exile. What does exile mean to you? You feel like you're in exile? You feel like you're in exile? I have 2 houses, 3 golf memberships, and 4 cars. That doesn't feel so terrible, you know? It's not all that terrible. Like, what's the problem, right? Andrew, do you feel like you're in exile?
Absolutely not.
Not.
No.
That is the definition of exile.
Ego.
That's the definition of exile. Exile is so constricting. It's so difficult. It's so challenging that we don't even realize that we're there. There's a beautiful story of a video, actually, of a Jew who came by the Rebbe, for dollars. The Rebbe would give out dollars every Sunday with a blessing. So this Jew walks by the Rebbe and he tells the Rebbe that he's a Christian missionary. So it's interesting to watch the Rebbe's interaction with him. So the Rebbe wishes him, I'm trying to remember approximately what happened. The Rebbe wishes him a speedy recovery. So the man says, I'm healthy. I don't need a recovery, I'm healthy. To which the Rebbe says to him that when a person is very, very sick, they're so sick that they don't even know that they're sick. And they're so sick that they think that they're healthy. You understand what the Rebbe was saying to him? You're so ill that you think that you're healthy. The man hears this, and something breaks in him as he asks the Rebbe if there's any hope for him. You know, here's a Jew who is so lost to his people that he thinks that he's found salvation, somewhere else. And he doesn't realize that itself is actually toxic for his soul. So he thinks that the poison is his cure. That's what he thinks. That's how bad it is. In the words of Isaiah, he says, they consider darkness light, and light they consider darkness. That's the depths of confusion. So this man eventually asks the Rabbi, he says, well, then hope me. The Rabbi says, yeah, of course there's hope for you. You just need to debate less. Don't debate stuff that you know nothing about. Learn a lot of Torah. Do mitzvahs and learn Torah. Story ends that years later, a few Yeshiva Bachrim bumped into this guy in Lugano, Switzerland, where there's a video of him sitting in talis and tefillin and davening Shema Yisrael from the depths of his being, where he seems
I didn't know he was Jewish.
I just said he was Jewish.
But initially it didn't sound like that.
I said a Jew came to the Rebbe. Maybe you missed that part.
Learn Torah, don't debate.
So that's what happened. Now, if he was Christian, there would be no need for him to study Torah and do mitzvahs because that's not his spiritual mission. Anyways, where am I going with this is that we live in a world of such confusion. Today, we live in a world of such incredible confusion, where people think that someone who has money is smart, and someone who has wisdom, right? How many people flock around the rabbi, and how many people flock around a millionaire? Just, think about it, like... If I were a rich man, exactly, nice, very good. So, we live in a world where there's tremendous moral confusion, where people can openly protest in support of Hamas. Yesterday they were supporting Hezbollah, and can you imagine Hezbollah? They were
gay people.
Yeah, gay people. They were protesting in favor of Hezbollah. It makes no sense.
Go there, see what happens to you.
It's such confusion. They were burning an American flag yesterday in New York City, and I don't think anybody was arrested.
Because they can.
Yeah. How does this even work? You're like, where are we going? This is the definition of exile. Moral confusion. Now let's move it up a notch to spiritual exile. So spiritual exile is when you live in a state where you don't even know up from down. You don't even know right from wrong. So let's keep it simple. Let's start at the foundation. What does it mean to be a Jew? To be a Jew is to learn Torah and to do mitzvahs. That's it. Keep it simple, stupid, right? Straight. 613 mitzvahs, right? But then, we live amongst the Gentiles. And living amongst the Gentiles gives us an inherent feeling of insecurity, and inadequacy, a sense of imposter syndrome. And we begin to question our alliances, especially after 2,000 years of trauma and persecution and expulsion. And we're wondering if where we're going to be expelled from next or persecuted. And then the Gentiles reach out to us with friendship. Now what happens? Our insecurity kicks in, and we say, "Oh, thank you so much. We'll do anything for your friendship." Right? We found a home. This is the Purim story. This is what the Jewish people did in the Purim story in ancient Persia and ancient Iran. Wasn't that ancient? It was just 2,200 years ago. And what happens now is that we cozy up to the king, cozy up to the government in which we live, and we forget Torah mitzvahs. We forget our true alliance and true allegiance with Hashem because we feel that we have a more important alliance with the local authorities. This is the definition of exile. Is losing your moral compass. It's like, if you ever been scuba diving, when you're down there in the depths of the waters, it's difficult to know which way is up. You know that? It's difficult to know which way is up. You can lose your bearings entirely. So the trick they tell you is that if especially if there's no light, you're in some sort of a cave, or if there's a covering, or it's nighttime, then you can't. Or if there's overcast clouds, you don't know. You don't know which way is up. Which way do you swim? You're running out of air. What do? They say you're gonna let out some bubbles, and follow the bubbles because the bubbles will always go up, right? Good clue there, right? But when you're stuck in spiritual exile, you can easily lose your moral compass. How many Jews you know that simply don't know which direction they're going in? So there was, I sent out an email the other day, on Friday, when the threat of an Iranian attack was escalating to screaming levels. And this must be in April 12th, because April 13th and 14th was the attack. I sent out an email in which the Rebbe responds to Israeli Prime Minister Yitzchak Shamir, who called the Rebbe for a blessing to thwart PLO attacks on Jewish interests and targets around the world. So the Rebbe responds with a very spiritual response, a very, very spiritual response, with fearlessness and trust in God and joyous attitude to God's upcoming salvation, adding in Torah, adding in mitzvahs, adding in prayer, adding in tzedakah. Right? This is the video that I sent out on Friday. So one of our members sends me he's not actually a member, I'm sorry, one of our affiliates sends me an email which he received. He forwarded this email, my email, to somebody in Israel, who then sent it back to him with the most ungodly expletives about my email. Expletives. I can't even pronounce the word.
It's okay, you do well.
With the most ungodly expletives. And I looked at the person's email with compassion. Instead of becoming defensive as to why he was ridiculing me, I looked at him with compassion. At this email, the person that sent it, and I also looked at the guy that sent it to me with compassion. Because obviously he's in a state of confusion himself, because he's not sure who to believe, the rabbi or the Israeli who said that this is a pile of you-know-what, right? So the reason I felt compassion is because here you are, you're dealing with a Jew who's entirely incapable of recognizing the role of God in his life. I mean, I'll give you an example. This Saturday night, I couldn't go to sleep because I was feeling, I knew that it was going to be okay, I just didn't know how. And I felt that I was experiencing the hand of God in real time. That's what I was feeling on Saturday night until I went to sleep at 3 a.m. when I kind of made peace with the fact that everything seemed to have been quiet. I just couldn't believe that nothing happened. I felt like the hand of God was watching over us, over the skies of Israel in real time. Now, I'm sure that there's people that are going to say, well, that was because we have the greatest army in the world. And it's got nothing to do with God. But somebody who talks like that is so steeped in their confusion, in their darkness, in their loss of orientation, that they can't even recognize the fact that there is a divine intervention that has allowed the Jews to persevere more than any other nation on the face of the earth, certainly more than any other nation that has been persecuted, not even 10% as much as the Jewish people have been persecuted. Right? Which nation has experienced an attack from Iran like that with countless missiles? Israel can't even count how many missiles, how many projectiles were sent over them.
Well, those
right?
nations are gone. The ones that have been persecuted.
Right. Well, are you gonna attribute that to the resilience of the Jewish people? Because we are stronger than the than the Gentiles. If we were stronger than the Gentiles, then we would all be part of the WWE or something, right? We'd all be Arnold Schwarzenegger. Every rabbi would be like lifting cars or something, right? That's not how it rolls. We're not like that. We're just not like that. Let's not be, let's not kid ourselves. Let's be real. There's divine intervention at play here. So I looked at this email with compassion. I'm like, seriously? Like, really? You cannot even recognize your own, the hand that feeds you? We experienced a miracle here. And by the way, I called it before. I sent out that email on Friday. I got the response on Sunday. I think it was Sunday. I got the response. I'm like, seriously? Like, not even one missile fell? Like nothing? You can't even recognize that? In the Gulf War, the Rebbe told the Jews in Israel, who were preparing for the worst, that Israel is the safest place in the world and nothing's going to happen. This is before Saddam struck with his Scud missiles, which is very similar to what happened here in Israel. He sent 39 Scud missiles in the Gulf War, 39 Scud missiles. This was 10 times more than that, at least. Well, approximately 10 times more than that. That's how many projectiles and ballistic missiles were fired at Israel.
Much more accurate weapons.
Exactly, and from much closer.
Right.
No, were they sent from Lebanon? No, I don't think so.
No,
they were coming from Iraq.
Yemen.
Right, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it's not as close. Yeah. Either way, so the bottom line is, friends, is that we're watching miracles unfold, and they're not finished, by the way. At any moment right now, Israel is preparing, allegedly, hopefully, to respond. Right?
President told me don't.
Right, and what that could entail, this might have just been round one of the miracle. We might need round 2 and round 3 and round 4. We're living in biblical times. These are miracles of biblical proportion. When you get that kind of an attack with this kind of an impact, it's really incredible, right? And yet we can easily think that it wasn't God. It was Jordan. It was the Jordanian army. The mighty Jordanian army and the Saudi Arabian, right? And the UK and the Americans. These are the ones that are responsible. You could say that. You could say that. But then you're lost, right? And this is, remember we said before that Egyptian exile was the template of all exiles. So now we can apply that as well to this point as well. Because what happened in the Egyptian exile, there's a very beautiful word in the Torah that says that the Egyptians enslaved the Jews befarich. Befarich, which would be Bfarech, befarich. The word befarich can be read in 2 different ways. The second way to read the word would mean with crushing labor. Right? So they crushed us. Like they broke us. They broke us physically. They broke us physically. That's what they did to us in Egypt. And that's, the traditional Exodus story that we learn about from Hebrew school, that they broke our backs and we were building pyramids or something. Right, and it was backbreaking labor. Right? We got that one. That makes sense. But that's a part of exile that's a little difficult for us to relate to. We don't necessarily look at exile as us building pyramids. Yeah, we're not really doing physical labor, even though we are doing physical labor. But it's more relevant. In other words, we're building. We might not be building pyramids, but we're building businesses, we're making money, right? So we certainly are in crushing labor. We all are invested in keeping up in the rat race, which is, somewhat similar to that idea. But the most critical definition of the word befarich is not the back-breaking physical labor. Befarich is 2 words in Hebrew, which is peh. What's a peh? Peh is a mouth. Rach means soft, a soft mouth. They enslaved us with a soft mouth. What does that mean? They spoke to us nicely. They spoke to us nicely. Now the Medrash says that what happened was, how did the Egyptians get the Jews to suddenly become slaves? How did this happen? It started off nice and easy. It started off with a nationalistic effort, where Pharaoh himself comes out and he says, "We're going to build. We're building stuff," right? And Pharaoh himself comes out with with whatever material you need to build the stuff. Right? He's got his bricks and his measuring stick, and Pharaoh himself is coming out to build. This is what the Medrash says. So who didn't see the Pharaoh himself coming to build and didn't join forces, right? Imagine if the President of the United States would come out here and start, and start building something. You would all come and, try to help, because, it's a nationalistic effort. And that's what happened. And the Egyptians were taking note. They were watching how diligent and how hardworking the Jews could be when they were fully invested and enthusiastic about the work. And then slowly Pharaoh was like, maybe I'll come a little late today to the construction project. Maybe I'll leave a little early. Maybe I won't come at all today. And slowly but surely it became the Jews' problem, and all the Egyptians were slowly. So in other words, they brought them in slowly. The analogy of that would be how you cook a frog, right? How do you cook a frog? You don't just throw a frog into hot water. You put him in cold water where he's nice and happy. And you do a little low fire, low and slow. So it warms, and the frog is getting comfortable and cozy. But before he knows it, he's cooked, and he doesn't even realize that it happened, because it happens slowly.
Today. I mean,
They actually said that today.
You had sometimes people saying here that you get ahead by working hard. That's what we're taught in the U.S. Work hard, you'll be successful. So we're working hard.
But hang on a second. Before we get to working hard, the part I'm trying to say is like this. What I'm trying to say is as follows: is that how is this idea relevant to us? Because we live in a time where the nations around us are being nice to us. I mean, not really today. Today, Israel is pretty much isolated. They were.
Not that long ago.
They were being nice to us.
They were, yes.
Yeah. No, you know why? Because, it's interesting. Right now, Iran attacked Israel. Paris, the Eiffel Tower had the flag of Israel projected on it the other day. As long as Jews are victims, the nations of the world will stand with us. But just watch this space. The moment that the Jews will stand up and begin to defend themselves, the moment that Jews express strength, wait and see the world support ebb. It's just going to disappear, because the world cannot support Jews that are strong. The world loves to stand by Jews that are weak or dead, but the world does not tolerate Jews that are strong, mighty, and fearless. So just brace yourself. If today war breaks out and Israel attacks Iran, we're going to be the villain. We're going to be the culprit, right? And all this talk about disproportionate response, you only hear it in one context ever. It's only ever said about the Jewish response to being attacked. That's the only time you ever hear the concept, this idiotic concept called a disproportionate response, right? After October 7th, what Israel should have done, according to this logic, this twisted logic of a proportionate response, Israel should have sent in rapists and murderers to behead babies and burn women and children alive, right? That would have been a proportionate response. I mean, it makes no sense.
Well, there is no sense.
It just makes no sense. The whole idea is twisted. So
there is no sense or logic in proportionate response.
Yeah, but it's only said
right,
when Jews defend themselves. That's the only time.
What was the proportionate response in
Hiroshima
Hiroshima?
That's what I just said. Chuck. There is never a discussion of a proportionate response when other nations defend themselves.
You don't win a war by proportionate response.
It's an anti-Semitic tool. It's an anti-Semitic tool. It's one of these little tools that are used to discredit the Jewish people when they defend themselves, right? So, for example, Israel sends one missile to take out the architect of October 7th in Syria. And then Iran sends us 300 plus missiles, right? Is that proportionate? Right.
Proportionate.
But now when Israel tomorrow takes out the Iranian nuclear reactors, or God knows what else they're going to do, that's going to be disproportionate, right? The attack of the Gentiles on the Jews is always disproportionate. But either way.
Well, proportionate is in the eye of the beholder.
Right. Proportionate is in the eye of the anti-Semite. I'm gonna modify that. So I'm just saying this, that Jews today, in general, before October 7th, we're living in places that we were generally welcomed, You know, in America, we feel very comfortable. Even today, we still feel very comfortable in America. It's just that Jews don't have the right to defend themselves in Israel. You know, you should be lucky that you should be happy. You should feel victorious that 300 missiles were sent on you on Israel, and they didn't do anything. So that's it. You should stop, right? Because tomorrow, if Washington was attacked by 300 rockets, then we would do nothing also, for sure. We would say, thank you for not killing anybody, and life goes on as usual. That's what would have happened.
We're good to go.
Good to go, exactly, right?
Take the win.
Take the what?
Take the
Take the
win.
win.
Canada.
Take the win. Is that what they told us to take the win?
Take the
win.
Right. Point being that, generally speaking, we are welcomed in the countries that we live in today. We're not like living in dark ages of Europe, where the Jews were constantly living in ghettos, for example, and Jews were forced out of certain professions, and Jews were paying exorbitant and astronomical taxes, right? That were backbreaking. Right? Today we're treated like equal citizens, like everybody else, and it's amazing. That is the spiritual exile. That's the beferach. That's the soft words, where we're left wondering where our allegiances are. We're left at a point that we're willing to donate $1 million, 7-digit figures, to American colleges. But when it comes to our shul, $180, and the rabbi is all about money. That's what you hear. The rabbi asked me for $180. Can you imagine? Just gave a check for $1 million to the most anti-Semitic college in America, right? Because we have friends in high places. But if the rabbi asked me for a donation towards the Kiddush, this is the end of the world. This is the spiritual exile, where we lose our bearings. We're like this. We're like underwater, and we don't know up from down. We don't know right from wrong. We don't know where we're going, right? Spiritual exile is losing our bearings. Let's take a look at this idea in the book. It's on page 363. Just a little piece for us to go through today. Welcome to Devo Jangles from all the way from Australia, where today is probably tomorrow. Right? Today's tomorrow. Good evening from the future, she says. Very nice. Okay, Daniel the trucker's with us. Fantastic. Corey, Hendrik in Netherlands. Terry from Atlanta. Shelley from Palm Beach Gardens. All right, let's go, guys. Page 363, if you have the book. The book is actually available online. You can, say the text is freely available online. You can see it over there. Okay, concerning the exile in Egypt, the verse states, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with hard labor. What is the word hard labor in Hebrew? The Hebrew word befarich is befarich. The Gemara explains two interpretations of this word befarich. Rabbi Lazar said as it is a composite of two words beferach, which means with a soft tongue. That's the meaning of befarich, that they enslaved us with a soft tongue. The Medrash states that Pharaoh fooled the Jewish people by using mild words in order to find out the maximum number of bricks that they could produce in one day. He then forced them to produce the same amount every day. Thus, beferach, the soft tongue, led to befarech, hard labor. This is the meaning of spiritual enslavement, where you lose your values, you lose your direction. Because you think that Pharaoh is my savior, and you forget that God is on your side. You think that it's the U.S.-Israel alliance, which is unbreakable, apparently, that's the reason for our survival, and you don't have the sense to say that, behold, the garden of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. You know, the U.S.-Israel alliance could have been strong for 75 years, but the garden of Israel has not allowed us to disappear for 4,000 years, right? I would say that's a pretty good track record, right? Painful, but pretty strong. When we look at the Egyptian exile, we understand that it's a template on our exile today as well. So when we sit around the Seder table and we repeat these words, that in every generation a person has to view himself as if he himself came out of Egypt, we realize, one second, I'm not in Egypt. And these actually we are. Actually we are in Egypt. We're living in a state of spiritual exile where we are not able to separate or differentiate between friends from foes. That's the world that we live in right now. That we're not able to explicitly say Hashem is our savior, and Very hard for us to call an anti-Semite an anti-Semite. It's hard. It's actually hard for us to do that. How many Jews struggle with that? Right? How many Jews struggle with being able to call out an anti-Semite? So there's a lot to ponder on this point. I mean, can you relate to this, Harvey? Can you accept this point? Okay, then there's a second point to Befarich, which is much more easier for us to relate to. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani in the Gemara that says, Befarich means that Pharaoh, by forcing us into extremely hard labor, broke us physically and spiritually. The verse alludes to this when it says, but they did not listen to Moshe because of the shortness of breath and hard labor. So this is a much more shallow understanding of exile, which is like, listen, you're so distracted, you're so busy trying to make a living, trying to keep things together, that you don't have time to go to shul, you don't have time to nurture a spiritual relationship. Because you're so busy doing what you have to be doing. These two components, we definitely can relate to the second one. Right? We know that life is difficult. It's a rat race. You got to keep up with all the bills, paying all your taxes, doing all your responsibilities. It's very hard to make space for Shabbos, to make make a budget for kosher, to send your kids to a kosher school, to a Jewish day school. It's not easy to figure it all out. It's really intense. So we're shortness of breath. We can barely keep up. This is a state of exile. And even when we are able to focus a little bit, we still can't find our bearings because we're spiritually confused. We're living in a world where our enemies are befriending us. How many Jews assimilated when attacked by the sword? And how many Jews assimilated when befriended by the kiss?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Think about this. The Jews were when the Jews were forced to kiss, to choose between the sword or the cross. How many Jews assimilated? Not that much.
No.
Not that much compared to when the Jews were befriended by the Gentiles, and said you can be like us, become like us. Right? When Esau is the first anti-Semite meets Jacob. Esau is the first anti-Semite. He comes, he's trying to kill Jacob, and instead of biting him, it says he kissed him. That's what it says in the Torah. It says he actually kissed him, and it's confusing. Like, really? After 34 years approximately of running, of chasing him, now finally meet him, they're going to kiss him? And our sages explain that the reason he kissed him is because Esau understood anti-Semitism. He knew that he could be far more effective in his anti-Semitism by kissing Jacob than by attacking him, by biting him. Because, in the nations, when the Russians, for example, they outlawed Judaism. When the Russians outlawed Judaism, think about how many Jews assimilated versus America, where Americans have befriended the Jews. How many Jews assimilated? Think about that, right? Now, the Jews of Russia, they were denied Jewish education, so they came out ignorant from Russia after two or three generations under communist rule. They came out ignorant, but they were still Jews, and they knew that they were Jews. And that's why today they're coming out and they're trying to discover. But what's going to be after 2 or 3 generations of American Jews? There's not much left.
No.
Right? That's the difference between hard labor and a soft mouth, right? So we, understanding that the Egyptian exodus or slavery was a template of all future exiles, we now begin to understand and appreciate what it means to live in exile. And this is a fascinating conversation to have with your children around the Seder table. To talk about what it means to be in exile. So apparently the Torah says that the Haggadah says we're in exile, folks. Well, what does that mean? We're in exile, and they say, well, I have a good life, golf course, and we play pickleball with indoor pickleball courts, right? Your life is good. But then you talk about this assimilation, right? How much assimilation happened when they try to kill us, and how much assimilation happens when they try to kiss us? The soft mouth is far, far more lethal. It's a spiritual enslavement, much more than the physical enslavement. Jews while in exile in Egypt and now as well are so broken physically and embittered spiritually that they are inconsolable. Identifying the illness is halfway to the cure. Having the courage to say, I admit that I'm in exile, that is halfway to the cure. It's like the Rebbe said to the Jewish Jew who thought he was a Christian missionary. He said to him, a speedy recovery. The Rebbe said to the Jew. And the guy was like, I'm not sick, until later in the conversation he realized that he was sick. Now, he's not cured yet, but the fact that he realized that he's got an illness, that's halfway to the cure. And if you can do that at your Seder table this year, if you can allow your children or grandchildren to realize that they are in danger, that they're not in a safe space, that they're in exile, and exile is a trap, you're almost better off in a crushing physical labor exile than you are in a spiritually destructive exile. Let me give you an example. If you had to choose between the test of wealth or the test of poverty, what would you choose? If God asked you a question, he said like this, look, I want to test you. Would you want to be tested with poverty or with wealth? Which one do you think is, would you choose? You want to be tested with wealth? Yeah. You know what the test of poverty causes you to do? The test of poverty often or inevitably has you turn to shul. You turn to God in prayer. Right? When you test it with poverty, you're like, I have no one else to turn to. So I turn to God. When all else fails, you go to God. But what the test of wealth leads to? Avarice. Complacency. Would you agree with that?
You start worshiping the almighty dollar and
That's right.
and materialistic things and forget about Hashem. I mean,
It's far more difficult
that's
for me.
American Jewry.
It's far more difficult for me as a rabbi.
In many respects. I don't mean to be.
Yeah, it's American Jewry. We're grateful. We're grateful that we're being tested with wealth because it's a more pleasant test, but it's a far more lethal test. And that's a conversation we have to have at the Seder table. To realize that God is being good to us by giving us the test of wealth and not the test of poverty. The generation of the Holocaust, the Jews who lived through the Middle Ages, those are the Jews who were tested with poverty. We, for whatever reason, are that 1 or 2 generations that have been chosen to be tested with wealth. Well, how are you going to perform in that? Do you even know that you're being tested? They all apparently stayed Jewish through all those tests. That's why we're still here. But are we going to stay Jewish? Ask your kids this question. Ask your kids if their kids are going to be Jewish. I can ask them. Right? What do they think? They might say maybe, or they might say absolutely, or they might say, why is that even important? Right? And that's going to be an eye-opening conversation. Right? The test of wealth is far more pleasant, but it's far more lethal. You think for me as a rabbi, it's much more difficult for me to get the attention of a rich Jew than it is of a poor Jew. The poor Jew's got plenty of time for me. It's the rich Jew who's like, what does the rabbi want from me? He wants my money.
Always want money.
Yeah, look, you see where I'm going with this, right?
Constantly wants me to show up at shul. I
Yeah.
got things to do.
Yeah. So this is a lot to think about. Let's just conclude with a summary. Each Jew in every generation must feel as if he himself has gone out of Egyptian exile. The Egyptian exile and redemption are indicative of all exile and redemptions, all occurring according to a divinely ordained spiritual agenda. Exile does not come about through one's own volition. It is a punishment. Ooh. Yeah. So it's not because of our bad decisions, but exile happens because of a spiritual cause. Redemption does not come about through one's own might. You need divine intervention. This final bitter exile is also a punishment. Through repentance, we will merit that God will send our righteous Redeemer. What this means is, folks, if you're looking for redemption from the Iranians, if you're looking for redemption from the Arabs and from all the exile that we're suffering today, we must turn to our God in heaven. We have to solicit every divine spiritual intervention. The purpose of exile is that we purify and elevate the sparks of holiness contained in physical matter. The bitterness which results from exile hinders the consolation of redemption. All right, we'll stop over there, folks. Have a good day, everybody. Shalom. And God bless you.